Welcome to Issues and Answers with your host, Diane Kinderwater. Issues and Answers is presented as a public service to inform, educate, and better the lives of New Mexicans. And now, Issues and Answers with your host, Diane Kinderwater.
Welcome to the program. I'm Diane Kinderwater. Well, it's election time, but then again, when isn't it election time? Here at KCHF TV, we are very proud and very pleased to take our responsibility seriously to inform you about the candidates who are running for public office in our state. And this time we've invited the candidates who are running for governor in the primary this June. We've invited all of those, and those who have accepted our invitation will be introduced to you, not just for a few minutes, for a full half hour. Here on the show today, I'm very pleased to be introducing you to Jay Block. He is a Republican who lives in Rio Rancho. He is currently a Sandoval County Commissioner. He's a retired lieutenant colonel in the Air Force. He is a business consultant in the nuclear industry, and so much more. So please stay with us as we introduce you to Jay Block and tell you why he is interested in running for governor and what he hopes to do in the great state of New Mexico. So please stay with us as we meet Jay Block.
That was great.
Thank you.
That was fantastic.
Well, it's a good background, so it was easy.
Yeah, that was awesome.
Stand by.
Now the rest is up to you.
Coming out. 5, 4, 3, 2.
As we know, the primary is this June. It just seems right around the corner. And there are a number of candidates running for governor. And a Republican who is running is Jay Block from Rio Rancho and a Sandoval County Commissioner. Welcome to the program, Jay, and thank you for running for governor.
Well, thank you for having me. It's just an honor to be here to talk with you. I appreciate it very much, your time.
I looked at your website, and it has a lot of information about you. A lot of this we're going to get out today. But if there's some things that we can't fill in our half hour, they can, again, go to your website, which is?
Well, it's block4, F-O-R, newmexico.com, or we could stay here for the next 3 hours and talk about so much more.
And there's a lot to talk about.
Yeah, there is.
Let's start with, of course, we're going to ask you why you want to run and what do you hope to accomplish, but a little bit about your background, Lieutenant Colonel, your father of 3, and again, so much more. What would you like to share about your background with the public?
Well, I grew up in Manchester, New Hampshire, in a 3-decker apartment building. I was really born into poverty. My mother was young. My dad was young. My mother was she had a drug problem. She had an alcohol problem. I had dyslexia really bad growing up. In high school, my parents were arrested for drugs. They lost their jobs. But I had a strong family network, even with my parents, who I love dearly, and they have recovered and done very, very well. My grandparents were the rock in my family, in my life. They were just, your typical greatest generation people. And, after high school, I didn't really have any money. My family didn't have money. I couldn't afford college, so I enlisted in the Air Force Reserve and then transferred out to North Dakota, where I went to North Dakota State University, and it was my goal to become an officer in the Air Force. So I worked my way through school, took out loans, got a scholarship, and got commissioned as second lieutenant. And then I went off to the nuclear track in the Air Force, where I was a Minuteman III launch officer. I was the guy with the nuclear codes, trusted with that responsibility, which was an incredible responsibility for a young lieutenant and captain. And it was an honor to pull nuclear alert for the country. And it's kind of funny when I look back, because here I was with a kid who battled dyslexia for years, and they gave me the nuclear codes. But I assure you, everything went fine. Later on in my career, I was able to represent our country twice as the senior officer and commander over in the Netherlands at Vocal Air Base. It was a NATO mission, and then in the South Atlantic on Ascension Island, a British island down there, part of the 45th Space Wing. And then I did my time at the Pentagon, with nuclear policy, but probably the biggest impact I had was volunteering to go to Afghanistan.
And that's what I read in your bio, that you actually, who volunteers to go? Actually, quite a few people ran a number of tours and duties in Afghanistan, but I read you volunteered in and also you felt very touched by what you did in Afghanistan for the Afghan people.
Yeah.
Yeah, you were instrumental in helping the women and children, and you feel very touched about that to this day. And of course, I imagine what has happened in Afghanistan since you left in the past year.
Yeah,
So it's pretty.
Seeing what happened to the people last August is just devastating.
Yeah. And of course, to the men and women who served, and we thank you, Jay Block, for your service, but others like you who saw the country fall apart, and they're feeling the same.
Well, it was the best part of my career and the worst part of my career that still haunts not just me, but other veterans to this day. But, you know, going over there and doing a lot of humanitarian missions was something I'll never forget.
And now you're carrying all that desire and all that passion to run for the governor of New Mexico. And that's a bold step to take. Of course, you have run for political office, the first Republican in Rio Rancho to win your particular seat on the Santa Fe County Commission, and you're very proud of your work there.
Yeah, so when I retired in 2016, I wanted to continue my service somehow to the community, and so I decided, talked to my family and some friends, and they said, why don't you go into a profession where everybody loves you? And they said, run for office. So I did. I decided to run for office, but for me, it was something I've wanted to do my whole life, because when Reagan was elected in 1980, he just captured me because he reminded me of my grandfather. And then I worked when I was a teenager for a guy named Jack Kemp, who was running for president in the New Hampshire primary back in '87, '88. And my views were really shaped by Reagan and Jack Kemp.
And he was a U.S. Senator, correct? And I think
Kemp was a congressman from the Buffalo area. Yeah, so when I...
and you interned with him?
No, I interned for a U.S. Senator in college, a guy named Bob Smith. But when in 2016 I was running for office, and a Republican never won my commission seat because it encompasses all of Corrales and southern Rio Rancho, and it was gerrymandered for a Democrat. And I went in there, and my daughter, who was 19 at the time, Madison, was my campaign manager, and no one gave me a chance, and that's kind of the story of my life, where I just had to, really claw my way through things. And we had no name recognition, no money, going against a well-known incumbent in a tough election year, what we thought for Republicans because of Mr. Trump on the top of the ticket. Well, we won. And it was a shocker. We turned Sandoval County Republican for the first time, and we got to do a lot of really great things up in Sandoval County with economic development. And we passed some incredible incentives to small businesses to help reduce unemployment by almost a third up there before the pandemic. I fought against the red flag laws, and we were able to pass a Second Amendment sanctuary county. We also started the right to work movement around the state and got it in Republican and Democrat counties as well before Santa Fe killed it. But what I'm most proud of is in Sandoval County, it's the fastest growing county in New Mexico. My hometown of Rio Rancho was named the best place to live, and my village of Corrales the safest place to live. And that model that we have up there in Sandoval County with pro-business, pro-law enforcement, great infrastructure, great schools is a model, a beacon, I believe, in New Mexico that we could bring up to Santa Fe statewide, because New Mexico, unfortunately, is an island of poverty in the Southwest, with every state around us doing better in every single category. So change is needed very much here in New Mexico.
And again, Sandoval County and Rio Rancho, they are at the top of many lists concerning great schools and safety in the communities. Yep,
it's very important to me. In fact, when I was running for re-election in 2020, I was the first commissioner in the history to get the union endorsements of the deputies and the firefighters up there. So I am all in when it comes to supporting our first responders, and all in when it comes to supporting small businesses. And I've done numerous videos with small businesses to promote them and pass initiatives to help them.
Well, we appreciate learning more about you, Jay Block from Rio Rancho, Sandoval County Commissioner, retired Lieutenant Colonel in the Air Force. Now let's move on to why in the world are you throwing your hat into this governor's race?
In 2020, I think it was a rough year, not just for New Mexico, but across the country. But the more that we saw how the governor was handling the pandemic and really just trampling on our rights and telling New Mexicans who's essential, who's not essential, what it was okay for out-of-state companies to come here and work when New Mexican small businesses couldn't work. That really impacted a lot of people, hundreds of thousands of people who just didn't understand, why am I not essential? Why can the governor go get her hair and nails done and go get her jewelry when I can't work? And then when you have seen what has happened to our kids with keeping them out of school, we're seeing right now some huge effects across the nation with our children, with increased mental health issues, increased suicides. We just saw a study that showed that a 350% increase in speech problems with children because of the mask as well. But what we don't talk about here in New Mexico is the impact that closing the schools down have had on our rural communities and our Native American communities and those children with special needs. So we're going to see some problems for years down the road with this generation of kids, that it didn't have to happen that way at all.
And that's when you decided?
I had enough. I talked to people. I remember campaigning for re-election, and there's two things that just really touched my heart. Was this one gentleman, his son was autistic, and he could not go to work because his son had to stay home. He had autism in front of a monitor for 6 hours, and it just wasn't working. And this father was just at his, just very frustrated. And then I met another lady, a mother of 3 kids who worked at a call center, and her 3 kids are home in this apartment building, and even in Rio Rancho, they didn't have the bandwidth for school. I mean, it was just a disaster of what we've done to these kids. And then we saw in Albuquerque, we lost 10 to 12,000 kids just dropped off from online learning. I mean, we were 49th or 48th in education when the governor came in. Now we're dead last. Things have got to change because we have one of the highest poverty rates in the nation, one of the highest unemployment rates. We have the violent crime is out of control, one of the highest suicide rates. Our healthcare system here is awful. We have doctors leaving because of bad legislation passed. There is so much that can be done because this state has so much potential, and New Mexicans are hurting. And I want to just bring them a little bit of freedom and a lot of hope.
Little bit of freedom and a lot of hope. And you feel that you have the skill set to do this, Jay Block?
I think so. Well, I know so. My experience leading organizations in the military, leading teams in private enterprise, as well as leading in elected office. I have been around this state so many times, meeting with different people, whether as a county commissioner or as a candidate for governor, or fighting up in Santa Fe. And people are just tired. I think they're waking up. I talk to people about, well, I'm a Democrat because my grandmother was a Democrat, my great-grandfather was a Democrat, my mom's a Democrat. And I tell them, take a look at John F. Kennedy. That party has left you. You are actually a conservative. You love freedom, you're a conservative. You love jobs, you're a conservative.
And there's still that mindset out there. The one-party rule of the Democrats. The people, their mindset, if they look at they're not looking at the issue, they just look at the name behind a candidate, it seems.
I was in Grants last night at a meeting, and they had, in Grants and Milan, these candidates for mayor and village councilor and city councilor. And I ran into this one lady who said, listen, I'm a Democrat, but I'm actually a Republican. I just got to go change my registration because I haven't voted for Democrats in years, and my family are Democrats, but we like to vote in the Democratic primary. I'm like, well, that's the problem here in New Mexico. We need to have an open primary for one thing. I would love to see that. But people are coming around, and it's really exciting to see. Unfortunately, it's taking what we have now in New Mexico, where we're last in everything, and we're struggling, where people are finally waking up after 90 years of one-party rule. It's just time for a change, and people want a governor who will serve the people. And that's been my leadership philosophy, whether it's in the military as an officer or in private industry or an elected office.
What I've learned from you is that you've really clawed your way. I feel that about myself and my career. Just a person who hasn't been handed anything. You told us about your background with your family and the struggles there, and that you clawed your way into an education to become a lieutenant colonel in the Air Force. That's
well, I looked at, I had certain people help me out through my life, but I look at my dad, and my dad was the type of guy who could just, never gave up. Even if something bad happened, he just came back, and he ended up doing very, very well, and has a beautiful house in the country and a house at the beach. He recovered, never blamed anybody else.
Wow.
My dad's just a very special.
That's a hopeful story.
Yeah.
To recover from that, from all of that.
And my dad did that. My grandparents were just salt of the earth people, not poor people. My grandfather was Jewish, my grandmother Catholic, and they built an incredible life together of just faith and family. And it wasn't about money for them; it was about the family.
Because that would help with our state clawing herself out of this 50th position in many places.
And that's one of the things I think that differentiates me from the other candidates is. I've been there. I understand the struggles when it comes to drugs in this state because of the open border. I've had to struggle with that myself and my family. I've had to struggle with mental health, with PTSD. So I can really relate to the average New Mexican of what they're going through. I've been there. I never, I wasn't a kid or a guy who went to private school and haven't had a silver spoon in my mouth or went off to make millions of dollars. I'm a blue-collar guy. I was raised in a blue-collar home. My mother was a truck driver. My dad was a welder, a carpenter, a postal worker, and ended up going back to school and doing well. And it's just, my family has made some mistakes, but they've been an inspiration to me as well.
And you have that hope in you, and we know that freedom can get you a lot of places if you have the freedom. Let's talk about some of the issues that you'd like to tackle. One of those is regarding waiving penalties and fines against churches and businesses that have been fined by our current governor because they wanted to stay open. They wanted to do business. They wanted to have their churchgoers return.
Well, that's one piece, because I tell people in the first 7 minutes after I'm sworn in, I'm going to sign executive orders banning the mask mandate, vaccine passports, forced vaccines, the 30-30 land grab that the government's doing right now. And I want to reimburse every single church and person in business that had to pay a fine under the governor's tyrannical mandates, which she herself violated numerous times. So it's different, it's rules for us, but not for her. And I will never shut down your business, your school, or your church, and I will never call you names like this governor did in Espanola, or call people lizard people. That's just not leadership at all. That's just despicable behavior. And there's other things that this governor has done that you know of, with paying off a sexual assault out of her campaign finance. It's time for some real, honest, transparent leadership to come back.
So day one, within the first few hours, you're going to sign a number of executive orders to kind of
Within the first 7 minutes.
Oh, the first 7 minutes.
The first 7 minutes, those executive orders will be ready when I'm sworn in at midnight.
Repeat them again, Jay.
Well, the 30-30 executive order, we're going to overturn 30-30, which the governor signed an executive order implementing.
What is that one?
That's where the government will take 30% of the land by 2030 and another 20% for climate change by 2050. So it's 30-30, 50-50 is what people call it. But the mask mandate, the vaccine passports, and the forced vaccines, that's not going to happen under my watch. I'll sign an executive order banning those immediately. And I want to make sure that we stop taxing our seniors' Social Security, our veterans' pensions, and I want to support our law enforcement by getting their qualified immunity back. I want bail reform back, and I want to take our first responders who retire here in New Mexico after 20 or 25 years, and I want to give them a property tax cut of 50%, because a lot of these first responders, it's a physical job. They're still in their 40s, they can have a second career, but they've had some, physically it's a tough job, but there's also some mental health issues with first responders, and I can relate to that because I firmly believe when a police officer puts that uniform on every day, they go into a combat environment. And I can relate to that because I just never knew what I was going to find on the road in Afghanistan. And these police officers put their lives on the line every single day. And I just want to say thank you to them and our firefighters.
Also regarding, we're going to touch upon each of those, but also you want to kind of secure our border. And people are always saying in the news, if really Fauci thinks that the pandemic is coming through the border, he doesn't think so because it's not secure.
Well, and we're not testing anybody on the border either, but I've been down to the border a couple times. I'm going down to the border again this coming weekend. And I look at the border as a humanitarian crisis. I look at it as a pro-life candidate. We have to stop the human trafficking, the sex trafficking, the employment trafficking, and we have to stop the drugs that are coming through our border into our country. We are now over 100,000 deaths in the past year of drug overdoses. That's a record. That has to stop. We're seeing young women that are being sex trafficked. We're seeing Native American women especially, being disappearing and being brought into the sex trafficking trade. So the border is a very near and dear issue to my heart. I've talked to ranchers and farmers down there. It contributes to crime, it contributes to a lot of trafficking, and these are human beings that are vulnerable, that are being taken advantage of, and these are people that have a lot of value, and they got to be helped. And closing up that border and stopping this is a big priority for me.
That's kind of a federal issue. How would the state be involved with that?
Well, I would send the National Guard down there, but I would also create similar to what Arizona and Texas has, a law enforcement agency. I call it a New Mexico Border Security Agency that works for me as the governor, but they would be partnered with local, county, state, and federal law enforcement officials, because the National Guard doesn't have that authority. So when I talked to the Border Patrol down there, they were short about 200 Border Patrol agents just in the southwest part of our state. They're not getting filled, and they're working so hard, and they're so dedicated, but they're so tired and so frustrated with the current administration. And the people down there have to be protected, because there's a lot of bad things coming through into our country and into our state, and we have to protect our people.
Voter ID is another item that you're interested in. I just heard recently, it's kind of funny, they were stating that, our precious right to vote, we don't have to show our ID, but now to go to a basketball game, a parent to go to a basketball game of their child's basketball in Albuquerque has to show the ID to get onto the court.
It's crazy. This is an issue that cuts across party lines. If you look at the polling out there, the vast majority of Democrats, Independents, and Republicans believe in voter ID. I think this is a first step into fair elections and election integrity. You have to have this. I think we're all tired of people on the left and on the right having these conspiracy theories when their candidate loses. We have to tighten up our election laws. We have to have voter ID. It makes no sense if you have to show an ID, to get a booster, or to go to a basketball game, or buy a pack of cigarettes, get on an airplane, open a bank account, rent a car, get a job, apply for a loan. I mean, you just have to have an ID. And for people to think that minorities don't have the ability to get an ID is completely racist in my mind. And that type of thinking, it's wrong. Anyone can have an ID. I favor the state paying for an ID if we have to, so people can have a government ID. But voter ID is critical to our country.
You want to be the next governor for the state of New Mexico, and you also want to limit the governor's emergency powers, something that is not happening at this point, Jay Block.
Yeah, we're seeing right now how one person making the decisions for the state has been just a complete disaster for the state and for the people of New Mexico. I firmly believe that it's my job as the governor to work with the legislature. And by the way, if I have to declare a public health emergency or any type of emergency, it should only be for a short period of time. And then if I need those powers, I should go back to the legislature to get approval from them. There's got to be checks and balances. There isn't. We have a governor who's just running roughshod over everybody. She's been called to the carpet by the New Mexico Supreme Court on federal funding. She has had ethics issues. Now she's involved in this $200 million spaceport investigation. She's been in charge of, we lost over $150 million in unemployment through the Workforce Solutions. She was involved in that. She's just been incompetent, and she's power hungry. And I am a limited government type of guy where I want to, I believe that the legislature should hold some checks and balances over me as a governor.
We have a lot of money flowing into our state from the federal government, and I say oftentimes the federal government, really it's our tax dollars. We paid into the federal government, and we're all saying, oh yay,
Yeah.
we're getting $1 billion back. Well, it is our money to begin with.
Right.
So a lot of money coming in here. What do you think should be done with that money?
Well, it's got to be targeted. I'm a huge infrastructure guy. As a county commissioner, I think the local governments can spend the money a lot more efficiently and targeted than the state government or the feds, by that matter. We prioritize at the county level our priorities, and we talk to our state reps and state senators, try to get funding through capital outlay for that. But one thing that New Mexico has is it's a huge state with a lot of government money coming in, but it hasn't really created wealth for the people of New Mexico. It's created poverty. We need more private industry to come in. What we've done in Sandoval County by incentivizing private industry to come in the manufacturing and technology industries has worked wonders. It really has. We are a very lean county when it comes to the ratio of county employees per the county population, and we're doing very, very well. People are working up there. People love being up there in Sandoval County because it's safe and it's good streets, it's good infrastructure, it's really good government that serves the people. And that's the model I want to bring forward to Santa Fe.
How is it different? Just the less regulation, fewer government employees? What's the key to Sandoval County success?
The key to Sandoval County's success is we have passed business-friendly initiatives, like with Intel. Intel lost 2,000 jobs from 2013 to 2016. It was one of my priorities when I was elected to go work with Intel. So we on the county commission, we renegotiated the IRB that wasn't touched until from 2004. So from 2004 to 2017, the county didn't do anything with Intel. We have an incredible financial advisor to the county named Rob Burpo who helped us negotiate with Intel, and they ended up hiring 200-300 more people there at Intel. Intel is now growing. Housing prices the values are increasing tremendously up there in Rio Rancho, which is good and bad for people who want to move up there.
So really what you're doing in Sandoval is not a secret, it's just good business practices.
It's good business practice. I don't favor subsidies at all, but when the subsidies that we do favor those incentives and the taxpayers in the black instead of the red, I'm willing to do that. I'm not willing to do, the movie industry, the hundreds of millions of dollars in subsidies that we're paying them now, we're losing well over 50 cents on the dollar here. So something's got to change. I love the movie industry. I want to have it here, but I want it to be fair to the New Mexico taxpayer.
Exactly. Fairness.
Because this is a great place to shoot movies. It really is. Just
Fairness.
Beautiful scenery and everything here.
Jay Block, I told you it would go fast.
Yeah, that was
30
quick.
seconds, what would you like to share with the voters out there? What's important to you?
I think what's important to me is...
You tell them.
What's important to me is bringing back your hopes and your freedoms and your opportunities. I believe in you, the citizens of New Mexico, more than I believe in the government. I want you to have the freedom to choose where your kids can go to school. I favor vouchers as well. I want to redo the curriculum for our schools. I want to make New Mexico the best place to live instead of one of the worst places to live.
That sounds good to all of us.
We have so much potential here.
Jay Block, thank you.
Thank you.
And you have your website that people can learn more about you, but we've got a good idea of who Jay Block is and what you've overcome to become the success you are today. Thank you for being part of the program.
Thank you for having me.
And thanks KCHF TV for bringing you Issues and Answers. I'm Diane Kinderwater. Make it a great week with your family. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Issues and Answers with your host Diane Kinderwater is presented as a public service to inform, educate, and better the lives of New Mexicans. To comment on today's program or to purchase a copy of any Issues and Answers program, visit sunbroadcasting.org or call us at 505-345-1991.